Nothing in this podcast or on our website should be construed as medical advice. Consult your healthcare provider for your individual nutritional and medical needs. The information presented is based on our research and is strictly that of the author and not necessarily those of any professional group or other individual.
Hi, I'm Sue Becker from Bread Beckers. Welcome to Sue's Healthy Minutes. I'm so excited you've joined me today, and I hope this episode encourages you and allows you to find the answers you have been praying for the health of you and your family. The testimonies of others can be powerful words of encouragement for us. So today, again, while we are still in Israel, I thought it would be a great day to replay the first testimony shared on Sue's Healthy Minutes. Tiffany Thompson is not only a good friend and a longtime customer of Bread Beckers, but she is the producer of Sue's Healthy Minutes podcast. She has a great It's the Bread story. So today, we hope you enjoy hearing a replay of episode 4 and hearing Tiffany Thompson's testimony. Even if you have heard it before, it is worth hearing again. I'm very excited about today's episode. I know that you have heard some of my story in the first episode, It's the Bread, and you will hear even more in future episodes as there is so much to share. But today I thought it would be great to hear from someone besides me, to hear their story and how only real bread changed their life and the health of her family. Today, I want to introduce you to my friend and the editor and producer of this podcast, Tiffany Thompson. In a way, you already know her. Hers is the other voice you hear on this podcast, the beautiful voice that introduces and ends each episode, the friend that has worked tirelessly to make this podcast a reality. For several years, I wanted to share the powerful truths that I have learned about real bread through a vehicle such as a podcast that could reach so many more people with a message of hope. But being very technologically challenged, I didn't even know where to begin. Then one day, I thought of Tiffany. Her skills, her knowledge, and her creativity I had seen firsthand through some of her own efforts to reach others with a message of hope about not only life in general, but real bread as well. She eagerly agreed to take on this challenge as she also shares my passion for whole grain, real bread, and the truth about a healthy lifestyle. So without further ado, here is Tiffany Thompson. Tiffany, welcome to this side of Sue's Healthy Minutes, and thank you for coming alongside of me to make this happen. It's such a pleasure to have you here today to share your story.
Thank you, Sue. I really appreciate you having me here today. This is quite an honor for you to ask me to do this, and I am very excited.
Well, I think it's an answer to prayer for both of us. So I'm so glad to have you here. So first, why don't you share just a little bit about yourself and maybe how you came to hear about Bread Beckers and Real Bread?
Okay, I am a mom of 2 boys, and I'm married 25 years to the smartest and greatest man that I know, whom I love dearly with all my heart, Brandon.
Who also makes some of this possible, which we really thank for that.
He is really the brains behind all of this. This could not be possible without him. And he's sitting right here just kind of giggling.
Well,
right
and
beside me.
Just so our listeners will know, Brandon put in all of our video equipment at Bread Beckers, which makes our live streaming, our videos of the classes possible. So we have a dynamic duo here that has made the ability to get this message out to more people possible. So we thank you both for that.
It's been awesome.
So first, why don't you share how you came to hear about Bread Beckers and Real Bread?
I first learned about Bread Beckers back in 2004.
Wow.
My son was about 18 months old, and he, from age 3 months, had been suffering with constant constipation. We had gone to the doctor over and over again to try to figure out what remedies we could put in place for him and really what the problem was. And the doctors never knew what the problem was. They would always tell me that it was just a normal thing, that everybody deals with it. And, you know, now that I'm on the other side of that, that's just mind-boggling that they just kind of dismiss it as being normal when it's really not. But, I was a new mom. I didn't know any different. And we really were not health conscious at the time. We ate at every fast food restaurant that you can name and on a regular basis. And that was just kind of how it was for us. It's how we were raised and how it was the American way. Right. And so I did not realize that nutrition played a lot into what was going on with him. So when he was 3 months old, they told me to just give him apple juice. And that was basically the remedy that they had for him. That was it. And so here I am giving my 3-month-old son apple juice. And I can tell you that it was, yes, it was a remedy. It was a very temporary remedy, but it was pretty messy. It was all or nothing at that point because, it didn't make him regular at all.
Right.
It just gave him relief. So we continued this quote unquote remedy for the next, I guess, year and a half or so of his life. In the meantime, he would get, every sickness that came around in the nursery at church. He constantly had a runny nose. He had bronchitis when he was 7 months old. But these were all normal things, right? I mean, all the kids deal with it, right? It wasn't abnormal. Like, when I would tell somebody that my 7-month-old has bronchitis, it was, oh, I'm sorry. It wasn't wait, wow. What?
Yes.
And so these were all normal things that our kids deal with, unfortunately, on a regular basis.
When you first heard the message, what was it that inspired you, that spoke to you? What was your initial reaction that made you say, I want to do this?
So when he was about 18 months old, I discovered a cassette tape.
That's going back pretty far.
That was in our living room, and it had been there for a few months, and it was on our desk, and I would pick it up and dust under it and set it back down. And I finally got to the point to where I thought, I have to listen to this tape. I didn't even know where it came from. Turns out my brother and sister-in-law had brought it over and just set it on our desk, and they had began milling their wheat as well. So I listened to the tape. I took it to my car, and I'm sitting in my driveway bawling my eyes out because it was exactly the information that we needed. And I felt the Holy Spirit so strongly at that moment and just say, this is it.
Yeah.
This is it. This is your answer. Yeah. So I knew that it wasn't going to be as easy to convince my husband because he is, like I said, he's the smartest man I know, but he gets that way through research. And he researches everything. He has a pros and cons list, and I'm talking days and days and days, not hours of research. And I said, God, if this is you, then I need you to convince my husband. And I brought it inside, and later that evening, after we put our son to bed, I told him, I said, I want you to listen to something with me. So we sat in the living room, and I went and dug out our old boombox that would play a cassette tape.
Yes. And now even CDs are obsolete. So that's why we're doing this podcast, so that we have another venue of listening.
Exactly. So we sat and listened, and it was, I guess, an hour or so long. And the moment that it was done, he looked over at me and said, let's do it. I knew at that moment that it was totally God.
Yes.
I knew that this was our answer. I still think about that, and it still baffles me that he would actually do that.
Well, that's even such a testimony to the message to me, that this very analytical, researching fella listens to this information and knows that it's real and knows that it's truth, scientifically and biblically. And we hear a lot. People come and they'll hear and they said, I've been praying to God for an answer, and he sent me here, or somehow I got a hold of this, or somebody handed me a CD or something. So that's pretty powerful that someone like that could be convinced. So Brandon, we're glad that you were convinced. He's still sitting here with his headsets on. So that was great. That's a big part, because I hear that a lot. People hear me speak like at a homeschool show, and either they have to convince their husband, or the husband has to convince the wife, either way, or their children. And I have a funny story about that. Actually, I spoke at a homeschool show, and this lady was like, I've got to do this, but I don't know if my child will eat this. I don't know if he's going to like it. And all of a sudden, this little boy comes running up to our table who had been eating our bread all day long. And he goes, Mom, where have you been? I've been looking for you everywhere. You got to taste this. This is delicious. So I hear that too. So it's pretty convincing information, like I said, because it's nutritionally, scientifically, biblically sound, and it's also delicious. So it doesn't take too much convincing there.
Yes, it is very delicious. So the next day, I ran out to Bread Becker's and I bought everything that I needed to get started before he changed his mind.
That's wise.
And, and everything I needed to get started, it was, I literally did the bare minimum because we couldn't afford much at the time. Like I said, our son was 18 months old, finances were tight.
Yeah.
But we did it. We made it work.
Yeah.
And we found a way because I knew that this was the answer that we were looking for.
Yeah. And that's the way it happened for me. When I discovered the information that I've been sharing, it was like, we're doing this. Whatever it takes, we're doing this. And it's a financial investment to a degree, but it's not thousands and thousands. I mean, the meal is, under $300, and then the rest is stuff you're going to eat.
Right.
Wheat and honey and oil, and that's just groceries.
Right. And if you think about the long term, like you said, it is an investment, but it's an investment in my family.
Yes.
And long term, it actually is cheaper now to make the bread that we make than it is to go to the store and buy it.
Yes.
And we're not paying doctor's bills. We're not sick all the time and constantly, paying our copayment or whatever,
yes,
and
I know.
And all that's involved with that, or trips to the doctor, or having to put it in our schedule, and all those things. Or not only the doctor, but like we're not constantly sick having to cancel events, our life is basically, it improved the quality of our life overall.
Yeah. And that's big when you don't miss church or miss school or miss events that your family wants because you're well, you're not missing all these things because you're sick.
Right. And then when there's other people around you that are sick, you're also not afraid.
Yeah.
Like you were before.
Yeah. So you never really thought that it was going to be hard, or I can't do this, or I don't have time for this, or this lady's crazy.
I don't remember that ever popping through my head. It was very easy. It wasn't overwhelming at all, and I was able to kind of incorporate it into our normal routine and dinner time or breakfast time, waffles, pancakes, everything, we started making them.
Yeah. So you started doing this in like 2004, is that right?
We did.
Yeah, so that's 18 years.
Yes.
Have you found that it's just become a routine now? It's so easy. You can walk in the kitchen and whip up bread or muffins or pancakes without even thinking about it. Almost. Yeah.
Yes. So we still have the original mill that we bought 18 years ago.
Yep.
And
it's
still
a workhorse.
Works perfectly. And I make at least 3 loaves a week. And then on top of that, we make pancakes and waffles and...
Yeah. Yeah. So let's go back to your son.
Okay.
So, because he was constipated and had all these issues. So bread comes into your home. You start making bread from freshly ground whole grain. What did you see? What health benefits did you see for yourself personally and your son and Brandon?
Well, immediately within the week, my son's runny nose was gone. Completely gone.
Yeah.
And this is something we've been battling, for the past year and a half or so. He was regular, and this was something that he had not been regular since he was 3 months old. So he was finally regular. His runny nose was gone. And I could just tell that, just that he felt good.
Yes.
You can just tell a difference.
They're happy.
Right.
Like we are.
You feel good.
Yes.
But we actually saw some benefits that we weren't really anticipating, because turns out I was sick too, but I didn't know that I was sick because I dealt with the normal allergies that everybody deals with, and my allergies were going away. I suffered from allergies all the time. I took allergy medicine, over-the-counter allergy medicine. I would mix it and take too much, and I'm sure, I'd probably overdose on it and everything just to get some relief.
Yes.
But one of the things that I used most all the time was nose spray. And I had it in my purse. I had it in my car. I had it by my bed, in my nightstand. I had it everywhere. And I was using it on a constant basis because it was the only relief that I could get to be able to breathe through my nose.
Yes.
Constantly.
It's highly addictive.
Yes,
so
it is.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that either until after I didn't need it anymore. And then I started having to wean myself off of it because I realized that I was actually addicted to the nose spray.
Yeah. And we explained all that in the digestion and elimination is how it affects your sinus congestion and some of those allergy type reactions that our body has. It's when it's overloaded with junk that's not getting taken out.
Right.
And it's taxed in areas. And that's kind of the same way with me. I knew I was constipated, but I never thought about my sinus congestion. Kind of like with your son. I just thought that was
just
normal. That's
the
everybody
doctors
lives
told
with
us
it.
it was normal. Yeah, you just have allergies. Just here, take some Claritin.
Everybody does.
Or,
just take an antihistamine.
Whatever. Yeah, take all
and
the
I
stuff.
thought it was normal that I got strep throat twice a year. Without fail.
Right.
I just thought that was, it's just normal. People are sick all the time. I didn't know that you could live with not being that way.
Right.
That you could live a different way.
Right. Something else that I was dealing with was eczema, and it was extremely painful. So I was actually visiting a dermatologist on a regular basis, and, they would give me these creams that were $150 a month for me to use just to kind of give some relief. And the doctor would say, once you get eczema, you have it for the rest of your life. That's just how it is. And so we were just living with it and dealing with it. Well, I noticed within the week of us starting our bread, my eczema was gone, and it has never returned.
That's something to rejoice about.
Yes.
Yes, that's amazing.
Absolutely. And so, like I said, I didn't even know that I was sick, and I was just doing this for my son. It's been now 18 years. And I have not had any of the antihistamines that I used to take before. Our sons, we have a 20-year-old and a 16-year-old, like I said, and they have not been sick. Our second son has only been on antibiotics one time in his life, and that's a whole nother story. But doctor visits are few and far between. We had an ingrown toenail, and then my...
I laugh because that of 25 years of raising 9 children, 3 doctor's visits in those 25 years for the kids, and one was an ingrown toenail, and I always clarify that. I was like, wait a minute, that one doesn't really count. So that's funny that you had the same.
Yeah. And another one was another eye infection that my son ended up getting a couple years ago that we couldn't figure out exactly what that was. And so we took him to the doctor on that. But other than that, that's
the thing. We're not saying this is the end all and the cure all and you'll never be sick again, but you'll get well, and typically without a doctor visit or antibiotics or the typical medicine.
Right. And not to...
so many Americans are just living on.
Right. And not to bash doctors or doctor's visits or anything. They are fantastic when we need them.
Yes.
But they are highly overutilized today. And we should not be visiting them as much as we are.
And I think for most, it feels like a necessity. Like with you, with your son, with constipation, going to the doctor and no relief. And I think of the definition of disease. I think I shared that in one of the earlier episodes, is it's an abnormal condition that affects the whole body of an organism. And things like constipation, those are abnormal, no matter what someone says.
Right.
Chronic sinus congestion, the eczema, these things are not normal conditions.
Correct.
Even though most of the world is suffering from them and we call it normal. It doesn't have to be. So you said that your first son was 18 months old when you started doing the bread, and then you continued on that journey very faithfully.
Yes.
This was the bread your family was eating.
Yes, we're
eating
it every day, all
every
day,
meal,
as much as we can, every meal. Yes.
I know. Jesus compared himself to bread, and people are always saying, how much bread should I eat? And I'm like, how much Jesus do you need? So all day, every day. So you were all in. You continued on this journey. 3 years later, or a little more, you had a second child.
I did.
Yes. So did you notice a difference in your pregnancy, in the birth of your second child, after you had been doing the bread, and his toddler years, than you did with your first child that came onto the bread at 18 months?
We did notice that after our second son was born, there was a distinct difference. And that difference was our second son seemed stronger and he developed faster. And not to say that our first son was weak and, undeveloped. That's not the case at all. But when our second son was born, we noticed that just within days, he was already holding his head up. And he started crawling sooner. He started walking sooner.
We noticed similar things. Our 2 youngest biological children were born after bread. And we noticed very similar things, that they could lift their head, they weren't wobbly. And I had actually studied that years before of vitamin E and just different nutrients, that babies shouldn't be born with this wobbly head. So we noticed that too. So that's interesting that you said that. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that or notice that except for me, but we definitely did.
Yeah, we did notice. One of the other things that we noticed too is, you know how like babies just spit up.
Yeah.
And our first son, like he didn't have reflux and none of that or anything. It was the normal, normal spit up. I was
So
like normal again,
normal.
right?
Yes.
And so we did notice that our second son, he didn't have that. Like whenever he would, take his milk, he kept it down. Obviously, there were some times where it would come up, but not very often at all.
That's normal.
Right.
Yeah.
But it wasn't after every feeding. He kept it down. He burped well. Like we do know that there's distinct differences between two kids, but there was a difference with the health of the two children.
And physical. Yeah.
Yes.
It was noticeably different. And that's what I find with the bread is the health benefits are noticeable, significant, and oftentimes immediate. So it's just amazing that something as delicious and nutritious as real bread can bring so many vast testimonies,
right,
and improvements,
right.
And some things we notice later. I think we look back and go, that I don't have that anymore, or this child was a little different and developed a little differently. We noticed big part is I call the toddler age, like 18 months to about 2 or 3, the snotty nose age. That never happened with the two youngest from the very get-go. They just never had that constant drippy snotty nose.
Or the runny nose when they're cutting teeth.
Yes. They didn't have that. Yeah. So that's a great story, and that alone right there is and it's not just that, oh great, they don't have snotty noses, that's wonderful. It's that something else incredible is going on in their body to prevent that.
Right.
And like we said, that is not normal.
Right.
And now we know that it's not.
Right. And whenever our kids, do get sick every once in a while, they may run a fever here and there, and that is normal. I mean, we are physical beings.
Yes.
We are spiritual, but we are also physical. And so, unfortunately, we are susceptible to some of the things that this world has to offer, and sickness is some of it.
Yeah.
But it's how our bodies respond to that.
Yeah.
And so, there are times where they may run a fever and we just let it run its course. And most of the time we have no clue why they're running a fever. It never even, comes up. They just run a fever. We let it run its course. Within 24 hours or so, it's gone.
Yeah. And
we don't ask questions. And we don't, kill the fever. We don't do any of that. We let it run its course. Yeah. And we know that our kids' bodies are working the way that they're supposed to because they're able to fight those things off.
Yes. Yeah, that's what we found too, that it didn't mean we never got sick at all. But when we did get sick, a couple of days down, getting good rest, water, drinking lots of fluids, and you were usually up and going again, back to your normal self. And that's the way our bodies should work. They're designed to get us well and to keep us well if we can give it what we need and then fight it when we get exposed to something. So yeah, it's funny that we have so many of the same similar stories and testimonies. I didn't realize that. That's the message of hope we're wanting to bring to people. And the message of Real Bread inspired you to make this change for your family. And though it was an investment of time, money, and a little energy, and maybe a little bit of unknown, it worked. And it's real. And that's why we call it real bread.
Right.
And that's why we say it's the bread.
Right. Right. And it's very easy. It's so easy to make this bread. It literally takes me 3 minutes to throw all the ingredients into the bread machine that we have.
Yeah.
And I come back 2 hours later and it's done.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely the easiest thing. It's easier than going to the store to buy bread.
That's what I find. I can make this faster than I can go to the store and get it. And these days, when you can't find it, it's been great.
Right.
Yeah. Ice storms don't scare me. I've got my bread.
Exactly.
So anyway. Well, Tiffany, I just want to thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to share before we close out our time together? It's just been so fun to hear your story again. I heard it many years ago, but had almost forgotten your testimony, and it's just so powerful.
I think if there's anything that I'd want to share is if anybody is on the fence and just really wanting to investigate more, or if you just have any more questions, just reach out, and Bread Beckers is here for you. They will answer all your questions and guide you along the way. But if this is something that you're thinking about, do it. Absolutely do it. Like, if you're waiting for a God call, here's your God call. Do it.
I love it. I love it. And if you've been praying for an answer, I believe that you're here because this is the answer for you that God has for you. So Tiffany's story is just one of thousands that we've heard in the more than 30 years of teaching others about bread. And maybe you have an It's the Bread story of your own, and we would love to hear it and maybe even share it with others. I tell everybody, if you tell me something, it just might be in writing the next time or on the air. You never know. But if so, we really do love these testimonies. Email us at podcast@breadbeckers.com. We really do love to hear your story. Or maybe you want to have a story like Tiffany's. If so, visit our website, breadbeckers.com, or better still, visit our store. Come to a class. All of us at Bread Beckers are here to help you in your journey to finding better health through real food and, of course, real bread. And the great thing is, this bread is nutritious and delicious. Your kids will love it, your spouse will love it, and you will love it, and you'll love the benefits. Thank you for listening today. Until next time, this is Sue Becker from Bread Beckers with Sue's Healthy Minutes.
Sue's Healthy Minutes podcast has been a presentation by the Bread Beckers Incorporated, located in Woodstock, Georgia. For more information, store hours, and learning opportunities, visit breadbeckers.com and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast and never miss an episode. Share this with 2 friends who would benefit from this information, and be sure to join us again next week for more of Sue's Healthy Minutes.